Community Beacon, Fridays at 6:30 EST, with your hosts Michael Seville and Joel Simmons. A channel whose focus is liberty. A place where the lessons discussed and taught will create openings to a more open and freer mindset. A mindset where you may reach the height of your potential and excel. Here are your hosts, Mike and Joel. Community Beacon, Fridays at 6:30 EST, with your hosts Michael Seville and Joel Simmons. A channel whose focus is liberty. A place where the lessons discussed and taught will create openings to a more open and freer mindset. A mindset where you may reach the height of your potential and excel. Here are your hosts, Mike and Joel.
What is going on, people? Welcome to Community Beacon. If you're watching this, it's Friday, it's 6:30, and we appreciate you guys for allowing us to be with you. Let's get into it, guys. Mondays, just a little quick housekeeping. Mondays at I've been releasing it earlier. It's actually been coming in the afternoon. What it takes, guys. Check me out. What it takes, where I discuss business. Really, a lot of this stuff is just some newer stuff. Is just mindset, man. I'm really loving the mindset, loving communication, loving business. So check me out on Mondays, Michael Seville, on all different platforms. Of course, on Wednesdays we have It Starts With Who, brother?
Starts with me. So we are definitely in the new season. Y'all, please tell me if you like that new intro that we got going on there. I thought it was pretty interesting. Jomer made that. So anyway, see y'all there at 12:30.
Tenacity Foundation. Go check it out. And of course, Fridays we culminate with Community Beacon at right around 6:30. And shouts out to the Male Perspective. Check that out. YouTube channel, Male Perspective, where we talk about, from a male perspective, from a male's point of view, everything that's going on in the world and the community. Real dope show that we got with the different questions. And I'm kind of here and there because the brother just sent me a picture of something that he just finished having, and I immediately got hungry. Like man, it seems like you all are eating pretty good over there at the station.
Brother, let me tell you something. That was actually leftovers.
Was it?
Let me tell you. Yeah, man. Yeah, because today I'm with a group of guys that their kitty has just fallen through. So I didn't know it before I got here, but I had to go back in there and I had to make that thing magic, and that's what I did, man. I made it magic.
Talk about making do from nothing. Oh my God, that looked like something. That looked like a chef. That looked like a chef, 5-star chef meal of what I was looking at with the asparagus and the meatloaf and the mashed potatoes. My God, shouts out to you all, guys. It's April. This is the first Friday of April. The last. We can kind of see it. Look at this. Look at the plating, the presentation.
That's what it was. And I was doing it for myself.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's leftovers, guys. The presentation. There's a quote where it talks about, well, actually, this is a Martin Luther King. And when Martin Luther King said, even if you're the janitor, to be the best janitor. So basically what I'm taking from it is no matter what you have, or what you're doing, you want to be the best at what you want to make it your best. Another quote that says, "What you do in one way, you're going to do in all things." So, man, that looked good. Awesome, awesome, guys. So last week we were talking about, we said negotiated, but it's effective communication. I think communication rules the world. Okay, if you're able to persuade and or understand other people's point of view, you can go so far. And then the next level was letting people know that you understood where they're coming from. I mean, a lot of us, we can kind of guess and we can kind of figure it out. However, to allow people to know where they're coming from, we kind of get it put together. Look, we got our producer back in the building. Shouts out to our producer who just checked in.
Hey.
So last week we kind of left off with, because I've always considered Joe one of the best communicators that I have ever, had the privilege of being around. And he named some great things. So if you haven't checked out our episode for last week, go check it out, where he spoke about one of the things that I heard was this silence. Some people call it dynamic silence, but just silence. One of the things he spoke about was having two ears and one mouth for a reason. We should probably listen twice as much as we speak, and not only just listening, but active listening, actually hearing what the other person's saying, because they give off different cues. And he spoke about some nuances that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration. He's talking about the change of pace. He's talking about the silence. If you're in front of a person, he's talking about the physical changes that appear within the person who's speaking when certain points are going to be made. And then he took it to the next level, which is saying a prayer to get even more out of it. So that's where we stopped at. And I guess we can kind of pick it up from there, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And, and I think that, and once again, I definitely thank you, because of, these words that you're saying, they definitely touched me. And, they just let me know that maybe I'm doing something right. And I appreciate that, and it's not to take anything away from you neither, because you have become extremely keen on listening to somebody. You have a way of also waiting until a person has really finished whatever they are saying before you start to speak. And that's
battle,
natural
bro.
for you at this point in time.
Yeah.
Is it really?
it's and that came from you. Truth be told, I was listening to you and I said, you know what? It's a battle. And sometimes I don't. I'm telling you, my personality is a driver. I don't know if that was if it was nature or nurture, but I know in my family, if you don't make a point and you don't make it strong, especially around the males, you're never going to be heard. You're not going to be left with anything to eat. And that's kind of how we were brought up. In the Caribbean household, the men are just yelling over each other. Like it's a constant battle, and you could be dead wrong, but you're just yelling. And so I came up with that same kind of thought process. And when I decided to become a better speaker, shout out to Toastmasters. One of the best things I learned during Toastmasters was that I got more out of the evaluations than actually giving the speech. I mean, when I'm giving an evaluation, you get more out of it because you learn to listen more. But when to effectively do it in a personal day-to-day conversation, I learned a lot of that from you, brother, because I noticed what you did. I said, you know what, this brother's a great and effective communicator, and I definitely took a lot of that silence of actually listening to the end of the point. You see, I just cut you off right now, right? So I got that from you, brother.
I love it, man. I think that's important in general, just knowing who you are. When we know who we are, we have the opportunity of, making adjustments. Absolutely. If we desire to. If we don't know who we are, then we're just kind of like what the Bible talks about, a double-minded man. We're just unstable in every single way that we do, what we think all the time. I think that part of what you were leading off on was empathy. When you were referencing the book, you're talking about being an empathic listener, and I think that's important. But I don't think it's, the number one thing. I don't think you have to be so empathic. I don't think you have to express empathy so much. I think that empathy is good when used appropriately. And some people don't know how to use empathy appropriately. But simply slowing down to listen to what somebody says and to speak with them versus at them, then I think that that right there is notable all by itself. And it's because we all come from different cultures and we all have different ways of expressing our points of views. So if I were to go inside of the Caribbean culture and I were to speak in a household of 10 guys, from your, maybe not your family, because some of your family knows me, but maybe somebody else who doesn't know me, then my pathway of speech may not touch them so quickly. I may have to redevelop myself. But on the other hand, and I want to make this clear, that's if I'm testing and trying. If I'm confident in who I am and how I speak, then there still can be a lot of power in being silent. The Dalai Lama, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. had a way to carry his words, to elevate his words, but then he also had a way of being silent. And sometimes when you're so silent, but when you speak, people and you speak well, people note that, and they're like, he doesn't say much, but when he speaks, you should listen, and that goes before you. So you got to take the vantage points of these different types of views, because I definitely want to talk about that more. You brought that up in the last show.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me. So you want to talk about the speak on that, because I had speak on that, brother.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so vantage point. They made a movie. Early 2000s, maybe 15 years ago or something like that, called Vantage Point, and uh, uh, what's his name? Forrest Whitaker, I think it was, that was in it, and you know, and it was like this. They told the exact same story, like six different ways, and it wasn't boring. It wasn't boring, but they told the exact same story. The only thing that changed was the view, was the, like you said, the POV, the point of view of the individual that told the story. And they literally told the movie six different times. They showed you the exact same thing from a different vantage point. And by them doing that, it kept it so interesting because you kept on thinking in your own mind, what did they see? What
Right.
did they hear? What came? And so you were mentioning on the last show, if I were to walk across the street, you said in sales, many times we want to walk across the street and drag or pull someone back to our side of the street. It's like, hey, this is where it's at. This is where you need to plant your flag.
Right.
This is what it's all about. But if you walk across the street and you start to see that there's something there, something else that you could not see from your original vantage point, and that's what true communication does.
Yeah.
It gives you the opportunity to actually go over to the person you're speaking with and stand next to them and start to look at things from their point of view. And that's what listening does for you. That's what the silence is all about too. It's all about attempting to get over there. Like, I need to be over there. I need to have my back to that TV stand right there. I need to be looking at the screen, over Mike's shoulder. And I need to be able to see what he sees, because I'm moving and everything, but the way I'm moving and gesturing, it may be coming across to Mike in a total different way.
Right.
Total different way. He could be thinking I'm yelling and I'm not. He could be thinking that I'm passionate and maybe I'm not. He could be thinking anything because of his vantage point. And that's very key in communication.
That happens a lot, especially when we talk about crossing different cultural and ethnic backgrounds or locations, etc. Like, some people can feel as if and it happens all the time. Unfortunately, a lot of negative things happen because of perceived aggression, perceived looking at someone in the eye. When you're hearing I think for Spanish, it tends to be Hispanic and Asian culture, where you don't really look in people's eyes because that's a sign of disrespect, especially if you're younger or you're different statuses, etc. Whereas in other cultures, like you look at someone dead in the eye. If you don't look at someone in the eye, then they're saying that you're lying, or it can reduce it can be a sign of disrespect. So the fact that you can, and then you spoke about they getting loud. Oftentimes in certain cultures, there's something in regards to the aggression. Like I know I've been accused a couple of times of, oh, whoa, you're coming off aggressive, and it's not. Oh, you're moving your hands too much. Your voice is intonation, etc. Especially when they're not used to seeing somebody like myself in certain arenas, it can come off of that. And if they're not talking about something, if there's I don't want to call it conflict, but maybe a disagreement or a misalignment between the two, not exactly understanding each other's points. So the more so of being aware of that. Here's the next thing that I've found as well, and that this is what I've really been working on. We spoke about the silence as well, is not having to give my state what it is that I'm thinking, or my feelings about something, or even like or giving someone a suggestion. Right? Sometimes people just aren't prepared for it. And you can tell that from the listening side of it. When someone is saying blah blah, saying whatever said, yeah, okay. I'm great at okay. Or I'm great at okay, you're right. And walking away from it. I have no problem. It used to be a problem for me because I wanted to get my point across, so to speak. I've reached a point in time where it's just like, I don't even have to get my point across. If people aren't being receptive, then they're not being receptive. And it's not that I want them to walk down into a negative pathway, but if people aren't open to hearing what it is that I have to say, and I've heard you say this before, where you say, brother, I can just place it here. What you do with it is up to you. Well, sometimes they don't even allow me the space to place things there. It's just like, this is the way it is. And I think Henry Ford said, whether you think it's right or whether you think it's wrong. No, is that what he said? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. But I say whether you think it's wrong or whether you think it's right, you're right and how you come across.
Right. He who says he can and he who says he can't are both right.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a powerful statement, and also about placing it. So here I want to build on what you're saying, because I think that this is like a great conversation, especially in communication, and you were mentioning something about, we both have kind of gone back and forth with cultural differences and things like that. And it took me a long time to really understand the cultural differences between me and my wife. My wife is Cuban, and if I speak to any Cuban male, which I got a lot of them that I work with, I'll say, man, I got a Cuban wife. They're like, oh man, you know what I'm talking about, and if I say, if I speak with my wife, she'll be like, well, you got a Cuban wife. What am I supposed to do about that? And it just means that, because her level of speech, her normal level of speech is elevated.
Okay.
And that's normal. That's just always normal, it just is what it is. And a lot of Cubans, Cuban women, they take that in, and they like, a lot of Cuban women that I have met, and a lot of Cuban men that I have met, they take that in. They're like, yeah, that's true. So anyway, my whole point is that you were mentioning men and how they'll be yelling and screaming in order to get their point across, when you were talking about the Caribbean nature, and Cuba is a Caribbean land. So sometimes you need to get that word through. So it's not just the listening part in the communication, it's also the deliverance.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's really important. One of the things that I mentioned maybe in the last show was that there was a point in time where I knew how to either be extremely calm and collected, or I knew how to like go blackout crazy type of individual, but I didn't know any middle grounds. Many people have the difficult part of their communication is the middle ground. How do I maintain calm, but how do I be direct? How do I be passionate? How do I be strong? How can I be bold, and then not take away from me being maybe empathic, or maybe me being, compassionate. You know, uh, how do I do that? And that sometimes that can be the tricky part, because sometimes people are very bold, and when they're very bold, they stay that way. And sometimes you won't allow somebody else to enter into the room with you and have a conversation. And many times people who are unsure about themselves, or who are very sure about who they believe you are, they will disengage. And that's what you were just talking about. They will disengage from the conversation, not for the same purposes that you were talking about, but they will disengage because
Right.
they don't want this argument. They don't want this fight. They were there yesterday. They were there with somebody else last week. They've always been there. They've never liked it. And you know what? Forget about it. It's not even worth it.
Yeah.
Some of these people need to have those conversations if they're in some type of bond with each other, friends, husband and wife, uh, son and father, daughter and mother, etc. And they need to have these conversations. But because the daughter or the son looks at the father and they're like, "No, that's it. I throw my hands up," they are already exiting out of the
Yeah.
relationship inside of their mind,
Yep.
because they've allowed themselves to be defeated in that communication, in that environment, in that very moment. What do you say?
Nah, absolutely, brother. Like you got to think, and this is what the we spoke about Chris Voss briefly. His company's called the Black Swan. The Black Swan is the information. He defines it as the Black Swan, and why he calls it the group is because in every negotiation or conversation, etc., there are biases, there are past experiences, there are something that possibly didn't that this person's not telling you across the room, and they're making decisions, or whether or not they continue to engage, or like you mentioned, to shut down. They're making a lot of these decisions based on all those that past information. This is not the first time this person has come into actor. So we as human beings, we quickly have judgment on each other. There's a 7 seconds. People normally judge people in the first 7 seconds of the conversation. So we quickly have, and that's how we survived as for so long, because we had to identify what was danger or what was not danger. So we quickly draw these what would be the word for it? These viewpoints on certain things based on past information. Like, you might not know why you dislike this person, but it's because they have a red hat on, and when back in the 7th grade, someone with a red hat pushed you. And that information is logged into your system. So now when you're having this conversation with this person, that kind of starts to come to a point. But then we also talk about the last thing that book talks about, the last, oh my gosh, the last impression is a lasting impression. So this is when you come into a conversation with someone, you have a lot of preconceived notions, or maybe you have some type of emotional feelings towards this person for whatever reason. And then this person can, by through listening to you and coming off in a different way, may change your mind. This is one of the things that they said Oprah did with her guests, is that no matter if they agreed or they disagreed and there was something going on, by the time the show ended, she sent them home feeling good. Whether that was off camera or something, so that a lot of them would come back, although they didn't agree originally. So it's important for us to pay attention. This is the effective communication part. This is the effective communication part of listening and going back and forth, and even seeing when people are starting to shut down by something that you may have said that may perhaps, and I think oftentimes we don't mean to. Well, I've seen some people who are intentionally out here hurting people. But I think people who are coming into a conversation with the best intent, most people come in there with most people come with the best intentions.
Yeah. Well, I like what you just said there, because I do think that some people intentionally, do or hurt. They intentionally are looking to hurt someone else. Some people are looking for revenge. Some people are looking to get even. Some people want their voice heard, and they're not really concerned what other people do, say, feel, or react. So not sure. Uh, you know, at me, I was thinking about something. I was going somewhere, and so here, this is what I want to say.
All right, let it bring it out.
I'm sorry. Anna complimented me, and it really threw my brain for a loop real quick. And I'm normally better than that, so I apologize. But that's why it's so important. Like yourself, myself, even Anna, the, those of us that are in the world that have this desire to help others, this desire to communicate, this desire to grow and to become stronger. It's imperative that we start to learn more about our own communication style, our own selves, so that we can approach other people in a better way. Because now, if I get in front, not in front of everybody, I'm still working on me. I'm not the best. But now, if I get in front of some people that are attacking me or attacking other people, I have words that I'm able to use, and I'm not saying I'm so eloquent with my words. I don't have a lot of big words, a lot of 15, 20 letter words that I can use at this point in time. But what I'm saying is that I have the ability to express myself in such a way. I understand different levels of tone, which I think we'll probably get into later, and I have that ability to make impact with few or many words. And it served me well when I've come in front of individuals who desired my downfall. And I love to give you an example in the next episode.
Perfect, guys. Listen, we appreciate you all checking in. This is a great conversation. Communication is so imperative, guys. So next episode we'll definitely be getting into the tone of the conversation, and our tone in general. Other than that, listen, guys, we appreciate you all for checking in with us, Community Beacon. We're in the spring season, people. Second quarter. Let's get it.